Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marlon Brey-Rayo. The subject that I chose for this class was budget constraint, chapter 3. We use budget constraint throughout our day ins and days out, the way we budget ourselves. We just never thought about it economically, or at least in the intermediate microeconomic way, with the math behind the graphs behind it, the calculus behind it. We just do it subconsciously, but in these next couple chapters, I'm going to explain that a little bit more, or in this next couple PowerPoints, I'm going to explain that a little bit more, sorry, explain the math behind it, the equations, how a graph would look, and so forth. So the topics that are going to be discussed is what is a budget constraint? How do we, the consumer, use it? The math that's behind a budget constraint, which are usually like derivatives and calculus, and how can it be used in a real life scenario? Now, in this text, this PowerPoint, budget constraint is the definition according to the text is the amount of bundles a consumer can consume according to their income. An example of this are the two pictures that I have to the right hand side. We have a Coke and a burger. And this is how much the consumer can consume of that Coke and burger according to their income. They cannot surpass their income. That's one of the rules. I will explain that later on. I also would like to state that the consumer's budget constraint can be changed due to an increase in income, or he has coupons or changes in taxes or vouchers. Now, the equation, which we will get into later, has P1, X1, P2, X2, and M. P1 is the price of goods. This is the price of the first good. X1 is the quantity of the first good. P2 is the price of the second good, and X2 is the quantity of the second good. M equals the consumer's income. Now, this is just one example. You can use many different examples as long as it's two different things according to the text. It's just two things that the consumer is consuming. I believe it's just for the basics of the math behind it, because once you get to 3 to 4 items, the graph looks crazy, and the derivatives, and you probably need a whole different kind of equation. Now, how do consumers use budget constraint? There are many reasons. They do to satisfy their consumption happiness, manage their finances, enjoy their favorite goods while still staying in their financial means. What does this mean? If I have $150 a week, how much of I could consume of my Cokes, or how many burgers I could consume to make me happy without breaking the bank is really that means the definition behind that. Now, budget constraint. The equation is P1 X1 plus P2 X2 is greater than is less than or equal to M. Now, as I stated before, P1 is the price of the first good. X1 is how many times was that first good sold. P2 is the price of the second good. X2 is how many times that second good was sold. And M equals the consumer's income. In this last slide, we have a real life example. Now, the example is Rob has an income of $100 per week, and he enjoys consuming a 6-pack of Corona, which is $10.48. And he also enjoys consuming his favorite pizza, which is DiGiorno's, which is $7.48 a box. What would be Rob's budget constraint, and how would he show that mathematically if he consumed one more than the other? In this graph below, we see what happens when Rob consumes more Corona than he does pizza. This is why you're going on a downward slope, and then it gets constant here, like a plateau, right? Now, let's say Rob consumed the same amount of Corona that he did pizza. Let's say it was 5 and 5, right? Because it'd be $50, and then it'd be 35 and some change right under the $100 mark. He'd be somewhere around here, right? Now, the opposite effect is also according to this graph as well. Let's say he consumed more pizza than Corona. Now, in this case, he would have an upward slope. Now, this is just one example of the way that you could use a budget constraint to show it graphically. There are many more examples. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be $150. I mean, $100 budget. It could be a $300 budget. It could be 2 different items. It could be different prices for those items. It is all as long as if you stay within the equation, correct? The equation is P1 X1 plus P2 X2 is less than or equal to M. So long as the rule applies that you don't surpass your income, the equation is valid. If not, you're violating your budget constraint. That is the end. Thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend.